to another edition of Retech, and today we're just going to talk about the Commodore 16. I mean, it's quite a nice little machine overall. I know it was kind of not very popular when it was launched, but it's a machine that was popular in other parts of the world. And I've done a few little bits and pieces on the Commodore 16 and the Plus 4, and including how to repair them and what to look for and so on. But today I'm concentrating on the Commodore 16 and how to upgrade it, because modern software that's brought out for the Commodore 16 seems to be looking for 64K of memory, and really it's kind of aimed more at the Commodore Plus 4, and that leaves a lot of Commodore 16 owners out of the loop, and that's completely the opposite to where we were when these machines were first brought out, because the Commodore Plus 4 was left out of the loop because every piece of software was written for the base machine, which was the Commodore 16 or the C116. Now, the Commodore 16 was really a repackaged C116 with a much better keyboard and nicer case, or rather a VIC-20 Commodore 64 style case, and it did improve the machine from the chiclet rubber Spectrum-y kind of keyboard that the 116 had. But the Commodore 16 kind of got left behind in the memory stakes. There were a few machines out there with memory upgrades, and they usually came in the form of cartridges, but the problem was that most of them didn't work properly. It would give you the memory boost to the machine, but it wouldn't actually run the software properly because the mapping was out, and that was the case for a lot of the hardware upgrades. So today I'm going to look at improving the Commodore 16, or the first step into improving it, and that would be down to memory and which package or which version I chose to make this machine run very similar to a Commodore Plus 4, and then we're going to cover the advantages to what it was going to be like if you had a 64K Commodore C16. And you know, it's quite surprising the difference the memory makes to the machine. So let's take a look. Okay, so the first thing you notice, we have quite a nice Commodore 16 here. It's in pretty good condition, and I'm just going to go through the upgrade on the machine and point out the reasons why and why I chose this upgrade over another. So we have the Commodore 16, and the first thing you're going to have to do is just take the lid off. Okay, and there are only 3 screws, so 1, 2 and 3. And all you need to do is take the screws out. Don't force them, and just take your time on lifting the screws out of the case, because remember the plastics are quite brittle on these machines. Okay, so once you've done that, all you need to do is turn the machine over, and then you've got access to taking the machine apart. And once the screws are out, you can just gently lift up the case, and in this instance I'm just going to leave the case leaning so we can have a look inside. So the first thing you're going to notice is there's a foam block here with 2 chips in, and they're the replacement chips that have been basically replaced with the kit. So you've got an upgraded kernel and a slightly upgraded basic, and they are ready fitted with the kit. And it's not necessary, but it's something, you know, I was asked to try out and to add to the machine. So, but what we're looking at today is this. It's the memory upgrade, and it has the CPU sat on the machine itself. Now zooming in on the board, you can see the two replacement ROMs here, and you can see the memory upgrade as well, and it kind of sits quite high, but it does clear the case, and it just clears it just enough to close it up nice and neatly without leaving any gaps or making sure that it's kind of missing the screw holes. But it doesn't do that, it shuts quite nicely. The other thing you can kind of really tell about the chip here, or the upgrade, is that it's actually very well done. It's a nice neat package, and you know, it doesn't really look that much out of place. Now if I zoom back out a little bit, you'll also see a small dip switch here, and that's quite good because on this package there is no external switch required, no holes drilling in the case to flick it from 16 to 64K. So if you want to revert it back to original 16K, it's just a case of flipping a dip switch, which is very, very neat. It's been very well thought out. One thing you will notice on this board, the Commodore 16 board, is the actual space you have in the case. I mean, there's a load of space between here and the board itself, and also all around the board there is a mass or a ton of space. If you zoom out a little bit, you can actually see what I mean. The board looks quite lost in places within the case, and that again was because originally this whole system was built around the Commodore 116 and then revised for the Commodore 16, and it's basically the same machine. Now, one of the reasons I chose this package is because it's come from the same place as the processor kits that I actually quite like, and it's one of the ones I used in the Plus 4 video, and the processor and the PLA and the ROM set for the Plus 4 all came from the same place in Italy. Now in Italy they seem to have taken the Plus 4 and the 16 a little bit more to their hearts than they have in the UK and the USA, and it's the same for a lot of parts of the world. The Plus 4 and the Commodore 16 and the 116 was a much more popular machine, and it's nice to see people producing things that keep these machines alive. And as I say, the package here is very good, using the original MOS chipset here with the upgrade board, and it's a very neat package, and I will put the link at the bottom of where these can be obtained. And you know, it's nice to support these people who are reinventing the wheel and bringing out upgrades for older machines. My next job on this is to actually make it into a Plus 4, but that's a little bit further down the line, and today we're just going to concentrate on what this 64K upgrade does for the machine. Now we've just screwed the machine back together so it looks like a common garden Commodore 16, and what we're going to do is going to power it on. And the first thing you notice is just standard Commodore screen, version 3.5 basic with 60K, 60.671K. So basically a lot more than you would get on a similar Commodore 64, and that's one of the things that is quite good on the TED range of machines, is that you've got a lot of memory to play with that you can use in BASIC, which the Commodore 64 you didn't, because the memory mapping was much better on the 16 than the 64. And the same goes for the Plus 4 and the 116, because they're all the same family of machines. And that would have made a massive difference to people who are developing their own software for these machines, and it's a huge jump up from 16K. why would you want to upgrade this machine from 16K, which most of the software was based around, to 64K, which not a lot of the software was actually based around? Well, the biggest reason would be software like this. Modern software written for the Commodore 16 and plus 4, or the expanded Commodore 16. And things like this work really well and show off the abilities of the plus 4 and what it really was capable of. So let's have a quick look and show the advantages of a 64K Commodore 16. Okay, so we have a Commodore disk drive here, and you're going to think there's not much that is really unusual about this, but to be honest, a lot of people on the Commodore 16 didn't have a disk drive because they were quite expensive in comparison to the machine, and most of the software was cassette based. But as I say, with modern software such as Pet Rescue, then the machine starts to come into its own. So if we pop the disc in, they're not the fastest drives in the world, but you know, it's much better than cassette. And you can see immediately there's a difference between this and a standard Commodore 16 piece of software. It's a lot more vibrant with a lot nicer music because it's got the memory to do it. And as you can see, there's a huge difference between this and a standard Commodore 16 title. It's almost 16-bit. I mean, it wouldn't be a miss on a 16-bit machine. This is a very, very good title, something that the Commodore 16 could never do. And also, apart from that, we've got other titles such as Adventures in Time, which again was an enhanced plus 4 title, generally meant for the 16, and it's something that the Commodore 16 could never do on its own. So we'll have a quick look at that just to hopefully try to inspire you to maybe upgrade your Commodore 16s. And here we have Adventures in Time, and again, graphically it's quite good, and sound is quite good as well, which combined the C16 or the C116 could never do. But again, even with a disk drive, it is quite slow because these Commodore disk drives still had the fault where they basically used the processor to bang out the bits rather than fix an inherent fault, which would have made these drives probably 10 times quicker than they are. Which is a shame really, but it's still faster than cassette. And again, graphically it's quite good. I mean, it's something the 16 couldn't do on its own with the limited memory it has. And if you just listen, the tune builds up, and it's quite a nice little piece for a very limited sound range on a Commodore Plus 4 and 16. Okay, so we've just had a look at the Commodore 16 and upgrading its memory, and as you can tell, the machine is a much better machine for it. It's up to you whether you want to upgrade your machine or to leave it stock, but using this version of an upgrade doesn't affect the machine's reliability and doesn't affect the machine's ability to run older 16K software. Now, but it also gives you access to more modern software and a library of Commodore Plus 4 software that was already out there. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the machine, it makes a difference to what you can run, and it makes the Commodore 16 a very, very usable machine. And it's kind of at a point where the Commodore 64 was really, and it had a few improvements. It had a few improvements because of the BASIC, it had a few improvements in the kernel, and that made a lot of difference. So from that standpoint, it kind of beats the 64, but in the sound department it's let down a little bit, and in the graphics department it's let down a little bit as well, because the Commodore 64 beats it in a few different areas, mainly the sound though, to be honest. And when you have games such as Pet Rescue and so on, it really shows off the ability of the Commodore Plus 4 and the 116, and it could have been a really good gaming platform. But alas, Commodore saw fit to launch it with 16K and no user port, but that wasn't the biggest issue, because at the end of the day, the user port really wasn't used a lot on these machines anyway. Now, this is the first part to looking into the Commodore 16 and upgrades. The second part will be when I get the parts I'm looking for my next step in upgrading this machine, and to bring it close or closer in line to the Commodore Plus 4. So that's the next step. So I hope you enjoyed this. Now, I know it's been a quite short video, but it's kind of just a quick look at what you can do with the Commodore 16. And I hope you'll subscribe, and we've got more to come, and more on the computer history side to come as well. So thanks for watching. Thank you.